Of what I talked about just today. So, and we're going to go in the order of Cathy Reisenwitz, and then Tur Demeester, and then Doug French will finish. So I'd like to introduce Cathy first. So I met Cathy first at the University of Birmingham, right? You were a student, right? And so it was a funny occasion because I was invited to speak there, and I brought with me my the suits from Agora Financial. And I lectured for something like 2 hours, right, on the subject of intellectual property. Oh, it felt like 15 minutes, okay. And Cathy was, I guess, a senior at the time. You know, this is only just a few years ago. And since that time, she's sort of rocketed up since her graduation as a major intellectual force in the world of libertarianism and commentary on social, economic, and cultural affairs. She runs Sex and the State, and, you know, you've actually starred in some media productions, right, a TV series and several other things. So Cathy is one of the rising stars of the current generation of libertarians, and obviously she's a Bitcoiner. What else can I say? So welcome, Cathy, please.
Wow, this is such an honor to be here. So it may seem a little bit weird to, I wanted to say also, if you want to tweet at me, it's at Cathy Reisenwitz. CathyReisenwitz. So, it may seem weird to begin a talk at a Bitcoin conference with a review of the scientific method, but I feel like if there were any audience that would at least allow me this, it would be this one. And the reason I think that is because everyone here and everyone who plays with Bitcoin is a scientist, and we're all participating in a great experiment. We all know what an experiment is. We form a hypothesis and we test it. But simple as it is, the experiment is the very best way we have to verify what we think we know about the world. And the world includes currencies. It may seem weird to say it, but I truly believe it would be impossible to overstate the importance of innovation, of the invention of money when it comes to prosperity. By making trade easier, currency fosters the innovation necessary to create wealth. So it's a pretty important thing to understand. To learn about currencies, we have to formulate theories and test them. Now, there are two ways to experiment with currencies. First, governments can and do experiment with monetary policy. When it comes down to it, the Weimar Republic was just an experiment. We've seen the consequences of that kind of experimentation. At the worst end, you have Germany, Chile, and Zimbabwe. But not far from that, you have the troubles with the euro, from the riots in Greece to the money grab in Cyprus, which prompted the latest Bitcoin boom. And then you have what we're seeing in America, which is the steady erosion of wealth through monetary inflation. Not only does inflation slowly eat away at individual wealth, but it also disincentivizes savings. And without savings, there's nothing to invest. So then without real savings, investment requires more quantitative easing, which begets more inflation, and the cycle continues. But on the other hand, individuals can experiment with currencies themselves. In this case, fewer experimenters lessens the fallout of a hypothesis not supported by the evidence. In addition, instead of creating victims like government experiments, everyone participating in these experiments is a volunteer. This, in essence, is Bitcoin, and this is why we're all here. Like good scientists, each one of you came here by asking a different question about currency. Can an online currency offer anonymity but still be trustworthy? Can a free market currency keep or increase its value? Can I trust an algorithm to limit inflation? Will an online currency lower transaction costs? Will it allow retailers to avoid paying credit card and debit card fees? Will wildly fluctuating value make an online currency unusable? Then we read up on the problem that we wanted to solve in order to see if Bitcoin was a good way to answer these questions. Then you used Bitcoin to experiment. You saw what happened. You wrote about the results, you tweeted about them, you created MOOC courses about them, you created conferences, all to share with the world the valuable information that you were learning about currency. And yet, even though these experiments were completely voluntary, even though they yielded incredibly useful information, and even though you were incredibly generous with sharing that information, some people have tried to keep you from experimenting. One Bitcoin user created an exchange which completely solved the problem of violence in the drug trade. He created the eBay of narcotics, and in doing so, replaced broken kneecaps with bad user reviews. Instead of armed robbery, he made sure that the Bitcoins weren't released until the goods arrived. But his invention has been forcefully seized. His customers have been dumped back onto the streets, and in the process, they've seized more Bitcoins than ever before. Even before that, they've seized the assets of your other exchanges. They've intimidated your nonprofits with threatening letters, and they've threatened to tax you, and they're still looking for ways to regulate you. Governments try to control currencies. With all that power, shouldn't they seek to learn as much as possible about them? Why would anyone attempt to kneecap thousands of unpaid volunteer experimenters who are constantly sharing with the world what we're learning about how money works? It's really odd. It's almost as if they're more interested in making sure they control the experiment than in what we can learn from it, which is unfortunate. Because when used right, trustworthy, flexible currencies facilitate investment, innovation, and ultimately prosperity. But when misused, currencies bring ruin, stagnation, and poverty. Figuring out how to use money is so incredibly important, and it's much too important to let petty politics, turf wars, and prohibitions halt progress. Earlier, I called you all scientists, and like all scientists, you need your materials, your variables, and your constants to experiment. But that's not enough. You also need the space and freedom to experiment. That's what's threatened by taxation, regulation, and intimidation. My purpose here is to first emphasize the importance of what you're doing with Bitcoin. I truly believe you are early pioneers who are making the world a richer place. But I also want to motivate you in joining the fight for the freedom to continue doing it. Because it's truly up to us, the people who understand what this knowledge can do for the world, to fight for the freedom to continue to find it. So please join me in the fight to keep Bitcoin free and legal. Thank you.
Talk, Arthur. Actually, you described yourself as Arthur.